Hello, everyone. Darren here. And on today's episode of WoTC Academy, we are going to discuss the opposite side of scouting, which is active scouting. Last time we talked about passive scouting. This time we're going to talk about the more commonly seen method. Now, nowadays, active scouting has been confused and mixed up with YOLO scouting. Um, YOLO scouting is not scouting at all. Well, I mean, technically it is scouting, but it's not proper active scouting and results with a quick trip back to the garage and probably a few reports from your teammates saying that you are doing unsporting behavior or anything else that they feel like reporting you about. I'm not joking about that, by the way. You probably will have people do that. Um, but briefly, before I get started, I'd like to discuss the differences between active scouting and the YOLO scouting. YOLO scouting is, while still technically scouting because you are going and spotting enemy tanks, in no way is it really active scouting or proper active scouting because you are rushing in towards the enemy team with your safety not at the forefront of your mind. Your forefront is to just spot as many tanks as possible and hope to God that it pays off, or you just straight up get killed spotting 14 or 15 tanks, and you go back to the garage in about 30 seconds of the game starting. And probably you also complaining about how your team doesn't know what they're doing when, they're still trying to get to a position to shoot at the enemy team because you're faster than everyone else. Active scouting, on the other hand, is the much more controlled version of that. Or basically, YOLO scouting is the reckless version of active scouting. Active scouting requires you to be aware of your surroundings at all times, requires you to think really quickly on your feet, and most importantly, proper active scouters will know their limitations of both their vehicle and how far they can reach while still staying in the safety umbrella of their teammates that they are trying to scout for. A proper active scout is not going to go outside this safety umbrella because then at that point you are into this YOLO scouting type of behavior. An active scout is going to stay in that safety umbrella to where if he does run into trouble, he will be able to have teammates to back him up by throwing shots downrange and helping take out the tanks that are rushing him or just have him pinned down. That's pretty much the main difference between active scouting and YOLO scouting. I would like to mention before we move on that YOLO scouting, if you do it, you have no one but yourself to blame. And I'm going to stand by that because realistically, no vehicle is going to follow you in there to shoot at stuff. And no vehicle is going to be fast enough to get into a supporting position to support you just as quickly as it will take for you to get killed by the enemy team. So at the end of the day, you really have no one but yourself to blame for the reports you will probably get and your own demise in that game. YOLO scouting is not a way to actively scout. It's a reckless one with very few times that it will pay off. So anyway, let's move over to how to actively scout. So, like the passive scouting video, I'm going to have some active scouting gameplay in the background, and we're going to just jump right into the crew setup for your scouting crew, and then we're going to go into the do's and don'ts. Now, again, I did mention that it's a min-max setup in the passive scouting, and after some discussion, very quickly, my review team came to the conclusion that there really is no difference for the scouting crew between passive and active scouting, unless you really wanted to maximize it in a particular field. So the crew setup is going to be exactly the same as the passive scouting video, but again, for the sake of, not having you go to another video, I'm going to have it listed here. So, The crew skills that we have in no particular order are going to be Born Leader, Rapid Loading, Steady Aim, Sixth Sense, Situational Awareness, Muffled Shot, Camouflage Expertise, Run and Gun, and Snapshot. Again, this is a min-maxed setup. It's made to kind of just even out the skills everywhere, so that way you got the maximum benefit that you can get in all fields without compromising, or minimizing your skill set in another field. It's basically kind of like a jack of all trades for scouting. So, yeah. Moving on to the do's now, we have quite a list, and that's pretty much the same for the don'ts as well. So, starting off with the do's, you want to conserve your HP. You are a light tank. The HP is going to come into play at the end of the game if you survive that long. So, in the event that you roll up on a tank that somehow escaped being spotted and has pretty much full health, you are going to want that HP in case it surprises you. Use the mini map a lot. Like I said earlier, it is going to require you as an active scout to be constantly vigilant, constantly aware of your surroundings and being able to think on your feet. And you want to keep an eye on the mini map so that way you can flex around the map and go where there's holes or where you think other tanks may be hiding, or just in some cases prevent someone from sneaking up on you, much like how that turtle did to me. I tunnel visioned on a vehicle. Moving on here, if you don't have support, relocate. As an active scout, you're useless if you have no support. If you get caught out alone, you're pretty much, it's the equivalent of going back to the garage, especially if it's more tanks than you can deal with. As an active scout, if you will be using your gun more so than a passive scout, target low health tanks or distracted tanks. Next one is use cover. All you need to really do is expose the top of your turret to see the area. That's pretty much how the spotting mechanics actually work. You don't need to YOLO out, much like you see a lot on Prokhorovka, where they're just riding the ridge. You don't need to do that. You just need to expose just that little bit, not your entire tank. If you don't have cover, use speed and distance, basically your view range with that. So, yes, also keep that in mind. Now, you don't have to stay exposed, just spot, duck, and then repeat when they go unspotted. So you really don't need to be staying out the whole time. Just spot them when they go unspotted. Then you do your spotting route again, spot them again. Do whatever's necessary to spot them, but don't do it recklessly and don't do it constantly and repeatedly. Finally, the do is much like any other light tank job. At the end of the battle, help do the cleanup. You are the speediest. If you are still alive by the end of the game, more than likely you will be the fastest vehicle around. You'll be able to respond to base cap attempts. You'll be able to respond to hunting down light tanks that may still be alive at the end of the game, who will probably be running around and trying to hide, and also being able to outcircle, any other tanks that are alive. Now moving on to the don'ts. This is a much shorter list, but first, again, I have to stress this one enough. Don't YOLO scout. You are not helping yourself. You're not helping your team. If you do YOLO scout intentionally and you get sent back to the garage in 30 seconds and you get reported, you have no one but yourself to blame. It's no one else's fault but yours. Don't repeat the same pattern over and over again. Smart players will pick that up. Basically, just making the same loop on that ridge on Prokhorovka may pay off about maybe 50% of the time, but if you take the same exact route, expose yourself long enough to the enemy team, a smart player is going to pick that up, and they're going to time exactly when to shoot you, and next thing you know, you're tracked, and you just get lit up by everything. You want to randomize your pattern Maybe you make a clockwise loop on that ridge. Next one, make a counterclockwise loop. Then maybe make another counterclockwise loop. Then make a shorter clockwise loop. You really want to randomize your pattern to help pretty much avoid getting shot. No guarantees, but it will be much less likely for you getting shot if people are unable to predict your movements. Don't tunnel vision. You saw in the previous replay of mine that I did do that, and I got snuck up on by a turtle. Being constantly on the move, you will need to be constantly alert, checking your minimap, checking your surroundings, and keeping an eye on spotted enemy tanks and, of course, your teammates. Lastly, I cannot stress this enough, do not YOLO Scout. Okay? Other than that, that's pretty much it for the do's and don'ts of the active scouting. You pretty much have a general idea of the differences between YOLO scouting, which I really don't even consider YOLO scouting. I consider it suicide. And active scouting, not to mention the crew setup. Now what you're seeing here in the background is, for probably the third time for many of you, is a recycled clip from Flying Egg in the 13105. He does this one again. You saw in the passive scouting. This is the second half of that same clip, only this time he's actively scouting. And you can see he's constantly on the move. He's constantly going to be flexing around, going where it's needed, going for tanks that he can do damage to, that he's got the flanks to. And he's not sticking around. He's not making foolish decisions here. Now, again, I'm going to be kind of like doing a little bit of a live commentary on this here, but he's waiting for the reload right now. He is unspotted, and he is going to shoot at pretty much what he can, and he's not going to stick around when he is located. He's conserving his hit points. He needs to make that last. He is a light tank, of course, and he's probably going to be the primary source of vision for his team. So, at this point, this close in the game, he has a very, very important role. And so just wasting the hit points, wasting, pretty much himself as an asset to his team is not a smart move. So he's playing very conservative. At the same time, he is doing what he can to support his team without throwing his life away. He is constantly on the move. He's constantly checking the map for intelligence of what tanks are left alive. And again, he's going to pretty much do whatever he needs to do to support the team right now. At this case, at this moment in time, it's trying to spot the tank's locations that are still left alive, while taking out a much-needed threat, a big threat to his team, the artillery, which he manages to do while avoiding getting hit by the tank destroyer, who probably backed down off the ridge because he got spotted. Even just helping spot tanks and push them towards the direction of teammates is still supporting your team. So again, reloading here, you may be noticing I can't really see that well due to the current render quality that I've got for recording audio. He is running out of ammunition. So he is doing what he can. There are some instances where I feel like I'd probably would be a little bit more aggressive, but of course I'm not him, and he is better than me. So who am I to really say that he's doing a certain decision wrong? I use some of his replays as learning material, much like you guys, because I always have room to improve. Moving on here to the next tactic, like singling out tanks. This is a very, very good example of a vehicle that you should, that you pretty much are a huge threat to, and this is pretty much why teams kind of look at you as being the only person to deal with this vehicle. Like the T95 here, you have the mobility and the speed to get around behind him. And if you see here, the T95 driver's kind of in between a rock and a hard place here. He's got a team, he's got an enemy in front of him and behind him, in this case Flying Egg, who is able to safely just farm him in the rear. Any other situation, more than likely, Flying Egg would be the only vehicle mobile enough to constantly get around behind the T95 and stay behind him. So T95 is taken care of. There is only one vehicle left, and well, I believe, yeah, there is only one vehicle left, and he does not have a whole lot of ammunition left. As you can see, he's only got 2 rounds left, and of course, unknown health of the well, now we know, pretty much full health of a version 5. So he's got to time his shots carefully, and again, this is where it transitions to active scouting is very important and a very vital role at the end of the game. Even if you don't have ammunition, those hit points will help. Because if he rushed in there only with the 2 rounds, but he had the hit points there, chances are he probably would have taken a hit and unable to really fight back with no ammunition. Mobility is a form of armor. So he's out of ammunition. He lets his team know. He no longer is, well, I believe he mentions to his team that he's no longer able to reload. But because he's able to actively scout the version 5, his teammates are able to take care of it for him. But that pretty much does it for this video. I'd like to thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this one, don't forget to subscribe. But until next time, this has been Darren of WoTC Academy.